Don't mean to be rude here, but I don't think anybody's really focused on the third quarter. You had a great quarter, but the focus is on the fact that you pulled your guidance for the rest of this year because of the impact of the UAW strike. Where do things stand right now in terms of the strike?
EVs didn't do very well. Like, they're not very profitable. They're not selling well. And I'm just wondering, like, why?
They're very cognizant of what it takes to compete, not only against the non-union imports like the Toyotas and the Nissans of the world, but the Teslas and the other EV startups.
Things aren't getting any easier over at Tesla. Worse than expected earnings, issues over the Cybertruck, and now more investigations. Elon Musk's company revealing its automated driving systems are under deeper federal scrutiny.
And today's major setback for Cruise. California's DMV has suspended Cruise's driverless taxis here in San Francisco, effective immediately.
All that and more, so let's get to it.
Phil LeBeau joins us now with a special guest. Hello again, Phil.
Hey, Joe. Let's bring in Paul Jacobson, CFO for General Motors. Paul, you beat on the top and the bottom line in the third quarter. Don't mean to be rude here, but I don't think anybody's really focused on the third quarter. You had a great quarter, but the focus is on the fact that you pulled your guidance for the rest of this year because of the impact of the UAW strike. Where do things stand right now in terms of the strike?
Well, good morning, Phil, and thanks for having us. First, I just wanted to say thanks to the entire team for a terrific quarter. Again, lots of uncertainty, lots of things going on, but the team continues to execute based on the vehicles that we're producing and the strong customer demand we see out there. We made the decision to pull the guidance mainly because of the uncertainty around the strike. We didn't want to speculate where the next plant might be hit or how long it might last. And we figured the best thing to do for investors was to just withdraw that guidance. Now, ahead of that decision, I will tell you that we were performing, the core business was performing at the top end of our range. But just given that uncertainty, we felt like that was the prudent thing to do in the short time remaining in the year.
Let's be clear. GM, Ford, everybody that's producing internal combustion engines will continue to have very good quarterly results. But you have to look into the future and see where the industry is going. The best way for me to correlate this is what I saw in real time. I worked for Blockbuster from 2000 to 2003, and I scoffed at that DVD by mail bullshit. But on January 16th, 2007, they changed the game. How did Blockbuster fare a year after Netflix announced its streaming service? Blockbuster recorded a 6.4% increase year over year in domestic same-store sales. My point is, in the beginning, things looked normal. Never better, in fact. Fast forward 2 years later, by 2010, Blockbuster was forced to file for bankruptcy after still being unable to pay off its roughly $1 billion in debt. That same year, Netflix hits 20 million subscribers. 20 million. That number sounds eerily familiar. Don't worry about that. It's just a coincidence, right?
You've offered 23% wage increase, cost of living adjustments, a retirement benefit increase, a number of other things that you believe should be enough to get the ball past the goal line. But Shawn Fain has come out and said, no way. There's more to gain, and he basically said Arlington's on notice. If you're an investor out there right now, what do you tell an investor? Because people are looking at this and they're saying, for as much as you guys are saying you're offering record contracts, the UAW continues to come back and say, nope, not good enough.
Well, we are focused, and the team in the room at the negotiating table is focused on getting to a good deal for our people and continuing to pay them at the highest rates in the world and getting them back to work. That's the primary objective for us, and we think it's the best thing for our team as well. There's obviously uncertainty out there. We're doing our best to manage through it, and I think the team has executed well. But I think the answer is to try to get everybody back to work as quickly as possible, and that's what we're committed to do.
Actions speak louder than words, Paul. Action.
Paul, clarify something, if you could. 3 weeks ago, actually, I think it was 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, Shawn Fain came out and said, look, we were going to strike, and he basically said we were targeting the Arlington plant. But, GM came up and they said, we agreed to have UAW members at our EV battery production facilities, the ones that are planned, the ones that, you already have one that's up and running. And we haven't heard a clarification from General Motors since then. Are you, as a company, committing to the UAW staffing your EV battery plants?
Well, ultimately, I think that's the choice of the employees, and the employees at Lordstown have made that choice. They're represented by the UAW, and the team there at the Ultium joint venture is negotiating that agreement with those members, as they should. You know, we have been consistent throughout this transformation that we want to bring everybody along, and we want to make sure that we transform at a pace that allows us to bring people along as well. And, you know, we're committed to doing that. So, you know, the negotiations get very, very complicated at the table. I'd rather leave those in the room. But, you know, we're doing our best to meet the UAW where they're asking and where we're able to do that.
Learning a foreign language is complicated. Trigonometry, that's complicated. This right here, this seems pretty simple. Even after this deal gets done, there's still going to be a lot of work to do.
But David, you know, the numbers for GM were pretty solid. So I feel like, does this take GM back in its negotiating position? Like, how do they not say yes to the auto workers when their numbers are super solid?
Because they're not thinking about what's happening now. They're thinking about what's happening 5 years from now. You know how much money they're losing on every battery electric vehicle that they make? Not to mention they're making them at a piss poor pace.
So, funnily enough, what I find interesting is part of what the UAW is sort of working against is EVs, right? In the transition, they'll need less workers and how to sort of have that spot as car makers transition. But EVs didn't do very well. Like, they're not very profitable. They're not selling well. And I'm just wondering, like, why?
It's tough to say that EVs aren't doing well when Tesla's doing amazing. GM, Ford, their EVs don't excite their current customer base, and rightfully so. But to answer the young lady's question, Tesla has presented one hell of a conundrum. EVs can be more exciting than internal combustion engine cars. And while they're expensive now, they're only going to come down in price. It will be more clear around 2027, 2028.
Why aren't EVs doing well?
Yeah, and sort of what's going to really turn that? They have the government support. They have billions to build EV factories. Like, what is the problem?
So the direct incentives from IRA don't really kick in till January, although there are plenty of incentives out there right now. Look, they're still really expensive, and there aren't a lot of models available compared to the rest of the market. The other thing here that I kind of keep telling people when they say, why don't we have this growth, is people aren't unhappy with their internal combustion vehicles. So you have to impress them to get them to buy an electric vehicle. Right now, the people who've bought them are the early adopters who love technology or have an environmental reason for buying the car. And they're also, right now, EVs are so expensive, they're luxury cars. And luxury buyers want to have the latest thing, so they've been buying them. Now the companies are moving into the mass market, and these are people who don't have as much money to spend, especially with interest rates this high. Price of a new vehicle is already well over $700 a month, and EVs are more expensive than that. So they're priced out of the range of a lot of people, but you got to get the mass market to buy in, and that's where we are. We're at this moment where now you've got to bring in your average buyer.
Let's get to the auto industry. In the last hour, the UAW expanding its strike to GM's largest plant in Arlington, Texas. That comes after the automaker beat expectations for Q3, but they did pull the full-year guide due to the ongoing impact of the strike. Strike's costing the automaker about $200 million a week in lost vehicle production.
Damn!
We're going to get more details on the impact Thursday when we get Ford. Joining us to break it all down, CNBC contributor, former Ford CEO Mark Fields is with us. Mark, this latest ramp-up in Arlington, I just wonder whether or not the hopes of a tentative at GM last week were foolish.
Well, Carl, I think what we're seeing now is we're probably closer to the end of negotiations than the end of the beginning. And the reason for that is, you saw that, the UAW has now struck the three most profitable plants literally in each of the Detroit three automakers, right? With Ford, with Kentucky Truck. And then obviously a few days ago, what they struck in terms of Stellantis and their pickup truck plant. And now, obviously, as you just mentioned, Arlington. I think that's going to be important because the UAW needs to be able to go back to their rank and file with whatever tentative agreement they end up with and saying, hey, listen, we gave the maximum pain with the exception of shutting down the entire automotive industry on these plants. And here's what we're able to get. So I think it's going to be interesting over the next week or two to see where we end up. But as you know, Carl, strikes are not like fine wine. They don't get better with age, right? They're not good for the automakers, right? Not only do they get a financial hit, but, we're in the time period where production of things like four-wheel drive vehicles for the winter, which carry better margins, are important, and they're not producing. And then, the worker on the line who's been out for 6 weeks, they're getting $500 a week. And, with this unprecedented level of transparency of the proposals on the table, you're going to start them getting antsy saying, hey, let's take this. It looks pretty good.
Right. So you're sort of getting to an ongoing thesis that's been out there, and that is that Fain, the UAW chief, is going to try to do what he can to get the pound of flesh, so to speak, to demonstrate to his members that they got the most that they could.
Yeah, I think he was waiting for the earnings to come out because, as you saw from GM today, the earnings was pretty good. It was down slightly from last year, but demand is still pretty healthy. And I think he's looking for that one last, if you will, cudgel to be able to use against the automakers to say, look, they're profitable. But at the same time, it's about time to cut a deal. But I think a lot of this comes down to some of the non-wage demands. And I think the key comes down to this demand from the UAW to want to organize the future EV plants or the joint ventures that are either set up or being set up by the automakers. And that's a non-starter for the automakers because they're very cognizant of what it takes to compete, not only against the non-union imports like the Toyotas and the Nissans of the world, but the Teslas and the other EV startups.
Ding, 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 ding! Tell him what he's won, Johnny! Your mother. Right. The Detroit 3 are going to be playing at a disadvantage. That's not up for debate. The level of the handicap, however...
Things aren't getting any easier over at Tesla. Worse than expected earnings, issues over the Cybertruck, and now more investigations. Elon Musk's company revealing its automated driving systems are under deeper federal scrutiny. The EV maker revealed in an SEC filing the Justice Department is demanding info about the systems and a range of company actions. Yahoo Finance's Alexis Keenan has the details. Hey, Alexis.
Doesn't sound good, but let's dive a little bit deeper. Is this your everyday FUD, or are we looking at some real fear, uncertainty, and doubt?
Yes, so we knew back in January that the Justice Department had asked Tesla for more information on its autopilot and also its full self-driving systems. But in this new quarterly report, we're learning that the probes are quite a bit wider in terms of subject matter and also a lot more demanding of Tesla. And that's because the prosecutors have subpoenaed Tesla. So in terms of they're not asking for this information, they're telling Tesla that the company is required to hand over information. Now take a look at those range of issues there. It's not just autopilot and full self-driving features. The Justice Department also asking for information on personal benefits, related parties, vehicle range, and personnel decisions, they say. Now, Tesla offered no additional detail in the report about these probes, other than to say, to the company's knowledge, no government agency in any ongoing investigation has concluded that any wrongdoing has occurred. Now, that leaves us to some speculation.
Sounds like all of this is speculation. Now, I'm not saying Tesla is infallible and can do no wrong. It just feels like they're grasping at straws, like there has to be something wrong with the company. And when things prove to be on the up and up, you'll get no follow-up report.
But what we do know is that as for the vehicle range, a number of news organizations have reported that Tesla's stated mileage range for its vehicles tend to not hold up in real life. And
I don't need to tell you that range is dependent on the user. An estimated range, depending on how you use the vehicle, will fluctuate.
As for personal benefits, in August, the Wall Street Journal had a report saying that the Justice Department was looking into whether company funds from Tesla were used to create and design a glass house for Elon Musk. Now,
oh, Jesus Christ. Don't we have more important things to worry about?
Now, last year also, Reuters had a report saying that the Justice Department was investigating Tesla's past self-driving claims. Though the company does maintain on its website that autopilot is not a self-driving system and that features that it offers like auto braking and lane correction, that those are meant to reduce driver workload, but they're not meant to have someone without their hands on the wheel. They say they're meant for fully attentive drivers is the way they say it. But the big takeaway here, Rochelle, I think that these expanded probes really add to this rough week that Tesla has had after its third quarter earnings call last week, and also to the existing investigations that we know about with the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration. Those date all the way back to 2016. So a lot on Tesla's plate this week, and certainly an expanded and deeper range of probes here into the company and its practices.
I apologize for wasting your time. But to sum it up, that's all the negative press that Tesla has going on at the moment. On to more pressing matters.
There's a major development just crossing in the last hour or so in the battle over driverless cars in San Francisco. And of course, Deirdre Bosa has that story for today's edition of Tech Check. This was the holy grail for me. If they could get this down, I could go to bed in New York and wake up in Washington, D.C. in my own car, but it's not going to happen anytime soon in California.
Yeah, the companies will certainly tell you that there's major safety implications. This is, the next technological breakthrough, but we're still a ways from there. And today's major setback for Cruise. California's DMV has suspended Cruise's driverless taxis here in San Francisco, effective immediately. Now, the notice from the DMV says that the vehicles aren't safe for public operation and that Cruise has misrepresented information relating to safety. In a statement on X, formerly known as Twitter, Cruise says the DMV is investigating an incident involving a pedestrian that was caught under a vehicle. Cruise says that it shared information with several regulatory agencies and will continue to cooperate. But this is a huge blow to Cruise, which is owned by General Motors. The San Francisco streets, they are a key testing ground for driverless cars, but Cruise vehicles have been involved in a number of incidents that have turned public safety agencies like the fire department against them. It's also led to more calls from public officials to suspend the program. Now, Cruise is also trying to catch up with Google-owned Waymo in the space, the other leading player in the race to develop autonomous vehicle technology. Both are expanding to more cities, and this suspension from California's DMV, that could have implications for Cruise's pilot programs elsewhere, widening that gap with Waymo even further. Now, we've been working on a larger piece about this topic here in San Francisco with our digital team, and I recently, just a few weeks ago, rode in a driverless Cruise and Waymo robo-taxis. Here is some footage from my Cruise ride. It didn't know what to do when another car was trying to back into a parking spot. So what you're seeing here is the driver got out of his car. He's very agitated. He spat on the vehicle, and then he kicked it. The steering wheel, as you can see here, it moved, but the car didn't go anywhere. And this was, I got to say, guys, an incredibly stressful situation that made me as the rider feel like this wasn't really ready for prime time. Of course, I'm just one rider, and this program has been in operation for a few months now. But by contrast, guys, I also rode in a self-driving Waymo robo-taxi. It was a lot smoother and far less eventful, and that program is still on here in San Francisco.
Yes, I imagine the Waymo vehicle was a little bit less eventful than the road-raging gentleman that was perturbed by your driverless vehicle.
What exactly is it going to take? California, Arizona are arguably kind of more at the forefront of this autonomous driver revolution. What is it going to take for these companies to demonstrate for regulators that these cars can actually be used in roadworthy situations?
I think put simply, it's going to take many, many more miles, right? That's the only way that this technology improves. That's what the autonomous vehicle companies will tell you, is that they need to be able to test on the streets without a safety driver in real life situations in order to improve. But there's drawbacks to that as well, right? Some of the public safety agencies like the fire department says that we don't really want you to use our streets as a testing ground, especially after all these incidents that have come up. I mean, you've had vehicles in the way of ambulances, of fire trucks, in the way of crime scenes. So the technology, at least some people say, is not there yet, not ready for prime time. And that's essentially what the DMV is saying now. But it's kind of a catch-22. If they can't test on the streets, they can't get better. However, I'll say that this is just here in San Francisco. As you said, Dom, they're testing in other places like Arizona. They're looking to the streets of Miami, LA to do more of this. So they could continue to test there, but certainly a setback.
They are definitely not ready for prime time, and Tesla isn't either. If it was about the money, Tesla could do it. Send out Tesla employees when the car is befuddled by construction or some rare driving case. But no, Tesla's going to acquire all the miles necessary to be driven before sending this thing out by itself, where you can actually get in the back seat and let this thing drive you in any given situation. This is a huge setback for Cruise and also foreshadowing for these other cities. It's not ready and they need more real world miles driven to make it ready. Oh, what's that? How many miles have been driven? Well, what's Waymo and Cruise doing? I mean, I'm sure they're close, right? 8 million driverless miles. Ooh, that is not a lot. So while FSD continues to accumulate millions upon millions more miles, more than Waymo and Cruise combined, it doesn't take a genius to realize that Tesla might be on the right path to solving autonomy, and without all the lunky, useless LiDAR and radar. In conclusion, how long can the UAW hold out this strike? Can the big three just wait them out? This is going to be an exciting time period for the UAW strike. We got a quick summary of all of Tesla's investigations along with DOJ subpoenas, no less. Will these inquiries finally find some wrongdoing done by Tesla? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And California tells Cruise enough's enough. You need to go back to the drawing board before you send these things back out. And it's a damn shame, because if I had to choose who I'd rather have on the road between this car and that guy, every day and twice on Sunday, I'm choosing the car. That's all I got for you today. Be easy. Peace.